right. So we have got Ben here. He's been working with us for around 3 months. And today we're going to go through how you found the duration of the program. So Ben, do you want to start by just giving us an overview of what it is you do, what your sort of business is, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, so I'm a growth partner for B2B agencies, help them get clients through social media with a bunch of AI and a bunch of systems, basically.
Nice one. So first question, in terms of the program, if we look back to when you started, what would you say has been the most notable change for you over the 3 months?
I think one of the biggest things that I've noticed is there's just so much more clarity over not only the AI scene, but actually just the online space in general.
Yeah.
Just having you there, I just like bounce questions off when I see something, see a trend, see this new system that someone's running, whatever. I could just bounce them off you. It feels like you just understood everything that was going on, really.
Sick. Yeah. I feel like in the sort of online space that we're in, like things are changing so often that a lot of the time you second guess yourself of like, am I working on the right thing? Should I be using this strategy? Is this the right thing that I should be doing? And sometimes having someone there, I think is really helpful to just say like, oh, this is how I've seen it applied, or this is how I'm using it. And that way, like whatever it is you're doing is actually worth it. Right.
100%, 100%. Whether that was on calls or like the WhatsApp as well, you get 24-hour WhatsApp support to you. You like at 9 p.m. I'd be just like see something scrolling on social media. I was like, I got to ask Samson about this, and it's just like clarity straight away.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm glad to hear that. In terms of systems, so potentially content systems, setting systems, systems for your operations and actually managing your delivery, what would you say, what type of systems have been the most impactful for you?
Yeah, one of the biggest ones definitely straight away has been using content to get those leads and get clients. When I first started out, it was just not really understanding what my content should be looking like to get those clients through the door. And then with yourself and like that outside perspective to look on like my branding, my positioning, how to set up the camera, the lighting, everything like that, just to help with those sort of minute details that actually clients can resonate with and bring them in. That's one of the best ones that I found, and it's made the messaging to get those clients so much easier as well. Before it was always like spray and pray. You're doing hundreds of DMs a day. You're tired. When you came in and you work out basically how to bring the clients to you and how to get clients that actually want to work with you as well and you specifically, yeah, it's just what those systems straight away massively beneficial, and it's made it making the actual content, you made it in less time than I was making it before. To like just making consistently great content. And then on the back end, obviously the being able to look at like the CRM and everything in one snapshot, move clients along there, make sure that once I've got a call with someone, I know that I can track them on there and like follow up with them strategically, keep them engaged. That alone has just kept clients engaged for the whole duration of the program, which has been awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, I think like with content, most people, when they don't have a strategy, it is just, I'm going to post and like hope something sticks. Where you have to be, I think what's maybe changed is like figuring out I need to be intentional with the content I create. It needs to serve a purpose in terms of moving that client through, that prospect through awareness. And then that way, the positioning is a big one as well, because I think when we started, I think I said to you, like, you were probably somewhat undercharging for what you were doing. And I explained to you, like, how your positioning and the way you present yourself and the way your content looks, like, that dictates what people, like, expect your services to cost, but also, like, how much they're willing to pay for them. And so by fixing that, I know that you were able to sign a client on a higher ticket offer, which is obviously great. And I think, their positioning, the content, and having it all intentional probably made a really good difference there.
Yeah. If you're starting out, you're hearing everyone say triple your prices, whatever, you're charging too little. And I was hearing all of that and I was like, I just didn't feel like my service was almost worth that.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand how to triple my prices because, yeah, my business wasn't quite in a position. I wasn't quite in a position where I felt like I could do that. As soon as you came in, we tripled the prices and sales calls got better. Again, closed clients. It was, easier to get them through the door. And that's because my content actually spoke about or spoke to that higher price point as well, which
Yeah, exactly. And like a lot of people, I think, have the misconception of like, if I charge less, I'm giving people like a bargain, and they're like, I'm giving this person such a good deal, like they can't get it this cheap anywhere. But in their head, and in like a business owner's head, especially when you're going like B2B, a lot of the time they just look at you and they go, okay, based on his price point, we now think he's either a professional because he's charging the right amount, or we think he's an amateur. And if they look at you as an amateur because of your price point, then majority of the time they're like, even though it's half the price, I don't want to waste the time. I don't want to work with someone who's not going to do the job. Most business owners, and I'm talking from like experience, would rather pay the higher price to know that the job's going to get done well. So often you double your prices. Sometimes sales calls going to actually get easier if you've been undercharging, and suddenly they're like, look at you with more credibility because you're charging that premium. So I think it's, yeah, important to work on. Okay, next question. How would you compare your knowledge in AI, in general, I guess, automation, AI, everything that we've covered, how would you compare it to when you started?
So one of the things you do extremely well is set up the prompts,
Mhm.
because most people are using it, and including myself, and most of the clients that I go on to speak to are using it as like an expensive notepad where they just write down their thoughts. ChatGPT make me a LinkedIn post, make me an Instagram script, and it just comes out sounding like pure fluff, like
Yeah.
ChatGPT would say. It comes out just yet, and it just sounds generic. It sounds cookie cutter. The way that you've set up my content generators, my scripters, my sales analysis, like my content
Yeah.
ideation GPTs, they all just become so much more clear to like how I want to represent the brand, and they sound like me. They actually say better things as well. Yeah, like I said, instead of that just like generic fluff. And then in terms of like the back end and the automations and stuff like that, obviously I was using a lot of the same software that we use, but just not to the extent that you had as well. So just like being able to come to clients with those like systems myself now, and having a clearer understanding of how in depth you can actually go with them is,
Yeah.
yeah, changed the infrastructure as well.
Brilliant. Yeah. I think like a lot of people do use ChatGPT the wrong way of like, they just go into one chat once, ask for thing, and then next time they go to something else. And I think what's much more important is training systems on your context. So your offer, your ICP, and that's why it speaks like you. And then having them as repeatable systems means that, you train something once, but you can now use it every single day instead of every single day thinking about what do I want to do and then starting from scratch with ChatGPT, for example. So yeah, I'm glad that that's been helpful for you. Um, what I would ask, next one, is how has, I guess, the way you look at business, because I'm aware that I have a relatively unique set of methodologies and like approach to business. So I just would ask, like, has anything changed or shifted in the way that you look at running a business now?
Yeah, definitely. So the biggest mindset shift that I've had since joining the program is for sure the idea that I was ready to basically invest every single penny that I make in the business back into the business,
Yeah.
and just hire every single piece of like profit back in to grow quicker. In my eyes, grow quicker. However, I'm not saying that wouldn't work, but the way that you do it is way more strategic. Like I was ready to spend like hundreds on hiring staff straight away, hundreds on um client delivery, expanding the services, stuff like that, just to get good results, whatever. However, the way that you've structured it is you where your business is set up in a certain way and you attract the right clients without that higher ticket price coming in, and without being able to save that money to expand on growing the business and stuff like that, you'll never really get out of like that initial like
Yeah.
barriers.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember we spoke about, because I remember you were saying to me like you had the idea of like expanding through outsourcing, I think, the content strategy in terms of for your clients, sourcing the way of doing that. And I remember we broke it down, and this is the thing, it's like a lot of things look great on like the first thought when you first think about them. You're like, oh, that would be brilliant. And then I think we did the maths behind it. It was like, this would massively slash your profitability. You would have to manage them to ensure the quality. Maybe there's a different way that we can do it. Maybe there's a different way. And I think this is something that I'm really big on, is like, how can we deliver the same value? Because in the client's eyes and in like the business's eyes, it doesn't matter how they get the value. The key is that they get that amount of value. So even if we do it in a productized manner where it's a guide that we spend time putting together rather than actually spending time on it ourselves, the client, I always think about this, the client doesn't benefit more from me actually spending more time necessarily, right? They benefit from having their problems solved. And if I have quicker ways, easier ways to solve their problems that don't involve me, then it means when you are spending that one-on-one time with your clients, like you can focus on the highest leverage things. You can focus on the things that they couldn't, solve themselves within a guide. And so when you're looking at like your value and how can you deliver the most for your clients, it's sometimes not a case of spending more time and doing more on your end, because that just means, the business is now less scalable, right? Sometimes it's just figuring out ways where I can still deliver that same value, still solve that same problem, but like without you involved. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Work out the better ways of solving the problems, basically.
100%. Okay, now next one would be a little comparison. How would you compare working with me to any other sort of mentors you work with, or any other, I guess, consultant slash agency? Have you found it fun? Have you enjoyed it? And I guess just how would you compare to anything else that you've experienced?
I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure what it is with yourself, right?
Yeah,
But I don't know if it's like ADHD. I don't know if it's whatever, but
been a little bit, yeah.
it's just like constantly every hour was like,
Jam packed.
oh, every single hour was like rinsed dry of value. Like it feels like everything that you could have given me in that hour, you gave to me. And like it's so hard to find that with mentors. And that's what really stood out through like the sales calls and the few calls that we had basically before I signed on. It was like, this guy is genuinely ready to give me as much value as I possibly could in 3 months. And that's why when I paid the money, it was just like, it didn't even feel like I'd spent that money. It just felt like it was like, yeah, just no stress at all. And like every single session, it paid off the same. Like being able to leave every single session and genuinely feel like I've nailed this section of the business, or just like feel so much more confident in this area of the business. It didn't feel like an investment at all. And like I say, other mentors I've had in the past, I remember the first mentorship I signed up for, I just borrowed money, and then the first call, so I borrowed money off my friends to afford it. The first call I showed up, it was genuinely a 2-minute call. I'm not taking a piss, for someone to basically just send me to a video and say, do this exercise, and then leave. That was literally it. But then this one, I just felt so much more like you cared about the actual growth that we had, which is, yeah, definitely different and definitely much, much better.
Brilliant. Well, I am, yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I feel like I do try my very best to make sure, because in my head, and I think a lot of people in the online space don't realize this. Like every time I look at an hour call that's in my diary with a client, I always think about like, how much did they pay for this call? Okay. And how can I make sure that they get that money's worth? Because if I finish a call and I don't feel like I've provided the amount of value that I charge for, then I'm disappointed in myself. And I'm like, that could be an unhappy client because they've paid for this time. Let me make sure that they get as much value in that time as possible. So it definitely is. There is an element of like ADHD where like we'll go through what it is. We've got like 3 minutes left, and I'm like, right, well, let's get started on this and try something in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and I've got a glossary of notes now that I can just look back at for good.
Yeah, 100%. And like, I highly recommend like what you can even do is probably just take every transcript, every meeting notes that we've got, rerun the program and start from scratch and be like, okay, where did we start? What did we go through? As like a refresher might be useful, to be fair.
Yeah.
I guess another question would be like looking forward to the next, I guess, like 3 to 6 months. How do you feel like confidence wise with the model you're in, the business that you've got, like going forward, I guess, compared to when you started thinking about like, how am I getting to get this to work? Would you say that you're more confident now moving forward?
Well, yeah, 100%. I think whereas at before, I was just a bit, it felt a bit generic, like info style
Yeah.
marketing. And I did want to move away from that and build like an established business that's someone that can actually like provide value
Yeah.
to other businesses, not just sell to other people that are looking to get into info, right? So being in a position now where I can confidently sit in a meeting with someone that's making six figures in their business and hold the frame and actually be able to provide value to these people,
Mhm.
so much more confident going forward. And like I said, we now have a process that takes that person from someone that's completely cold to signing them as a client and then providing the results as well. So then now that's just the runway to keep going with that.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like once you get it down to a standardized process, then it's like, this is just what we do now. We just wake up and we follow these processes, right? This is what we do. We take prospects from here, we take them through this, and it's like, it stops being guesswork of like, let me just keep trying a bunch of random different things to sign a client. I always say to people, you just got to find something that works once, document it, and then it's like, that's just now what you do. That's your day to day. That's just how your life is. And I feel like that's a really important shift. Also with what you said of like the moving more to B2B and like more established businesses, so many people have this misconception of like, let me go for the lower tier because that's going to be easier, right? And majority of the time you sign a deal with a client doing six figures a month versus, making a couple grand a month. It's going to be the exact same process. The call duration is probably going to be the exact same. It's going to be the same conversation, except the established business isn't going to blink when you pitch your price point because that's probably nothing to them, right? They're going to be quicker to get things done. They're more likely to get really great results, and they're normally a much better client to work with. So, like, I'm glad that you've realized that in that conversation and in those kind of calls, you can hold your frame and like keep your authority and positioning, and you can provide these guys real value. And a lot of the time, like, even if you're doing, only handling a small part of their strategy, if you're doing it for a company that's doing six figures a month, right, then the impact of that is way more. And so they actually see the benefit more than the little guy does, even though you're doing the same thing. So I think that's really good that you are confident in going for those sort of companies.
Yeah. And the setup you've got is now to help people solve bigger problems.
Exactly.
It's not generic info, like you're not helping 16-year-olds
Yeah,
get clients through social media. You're genuinely helping established business owners solve specific issues that they're struggling with and step into these new generation of like social media, AI systems, stuff like that. These people are just as lost as the people that have never touched social media. And
exactly.
you set up a business in a way that is established enough to get those people on calls and get them as clients.
So Ben, in terms of, I guess, like skills you've developed over the 3 months and things that we've been working on, what would you say is one of the skills where you've seen the most improvement and actually seen like a noticeable impact?
Yeah, the one skill that I think not only noticed the most impact, but is one of the most important that you're gonna have when you're doing these conversations is obviously the actual ability to sell these products.
Yeah,
And that doesn't just mean like bringing up pain for these business owners or whatever. It's not necessarily the same as if you're selling D2C, right? You're selling B2B, and selling to these business owners and stuff like this is actually there's a bit more of like a technical element to it, and it comes down to having actual clarity in what you do and confidence to deliver transformation to these people. So the actual, not only just like setting up a sales calls and holding the frame, like I say, and guiding them through this process, there's so much more than just those things, because you actually need to understand what these business owners want to see and what they want to get out of a program like yours and what they want to see in yourself as well,
yeah,
as a young entrepreneur that's confident enough to sit on these calls. So the ability to sell B2B and higher ticket packages, yeah, been game changing.
perfect. Yeah, because I think like a lot of people underestimate sales. They're like, I just need to book more calls. And it's like, what's the point booking up a ton of calls if you don't know how to sell them? You're just going to waste everyone's time. So it's like you need to, and I think some people, if they transition from B2C to B2B, they don't realize that it's a much more like logical conversation, right? In terms
Yeah.
of it's less about, you know, you have a wife? Do you have a kids? What's your dream outcome, right? And it's much more about, here's the logical next steps to solve your problem. Here's the transformation that I know that you want or that you need. And now let me explain how I can deliver that. And like a lot of that comes down to the clarity on the offer, right? Which is what you said right at the start, is like, one of the biggest differences I notice with a lot of our clients is like, as soon as they get clarity on what they actually do, what the transformation is, and why it's actually beneficial to the person that they're speaking to, then selling becomes a lot easier because they're not trying to convince someone. They're simply explaining, well, here's the value of it, right? Here's
Yeah.
why you should care. And a lot of people forget that sales isn't about what you do and trying to pitch what you do. It's about making the person in front of you aware of why they should even care in the first place, or why they should even be looking into it, right? Because then when they understand that and you provide a logical solution, then it's a bit of a no-brainer. Cool. All right. Very last question, Ben. What would you say to someone who is on the fence about working with me one-on-one?
Samson is not like anyone else that I've met or that I've been pitched by on social media. Now, anyone that was in my position and you're sort of in the first couple years of business, Samson will be in the trenches with you. Like he's not just going to get someone that knows a bit about content to audit your content post. Like he's going to be in the trenches with you. He's going to send you every bit of information, every single resource that he's got, he will send to you. And for that, I think he is more valuable than a 10K community that you're looking at, or like any sort of high ticket consultancy where you're not actually getting one-to-one support with someone that's been and walked the walk. So that's one reason why I say that anyone starting out needs that direct one-on-one support with a literal expert as yourself. So yeah, whether you're on the fence, debating the program, if you feel like you need support in any area around delivery, sales, like anything like that, acquisition, Samson will be able to guide you through those bottlenecks and show you exactly how he does it himself.
Oh, I massively appreciate that, Ben. Well, it has been a pleasure working with you last 3 months. It's been a lot of fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed every single call. Um, and yeah, I'm super excited to see you keep going and scale this business. So yeah, let's keep it going. Let's run it up, Ben, and I will catch you in the next one.
Awesome. Thank you very much, man. Yeah, no, it's been really good, genuinely really good. And I think the way that you set it up is genuinely more valuable than 6K programs.